My father who abandoned me is now demanding I give part of my grandfather's inheritance to his new stepdaughter. The phone rang at 6 a.m. on the anniversary of Grandpa's death. I should have known. 12 years of silence, and he picks today to resurface like some toxic ghost. Raven, we need to talk. Dad's voice hadn't changed, still that same entitled tone that used to make me hide in my bedroom closet when I was 8. We have nothing to discuss, I said, already reaching to hang up. My coffee was getting cold, and I had a presentation at work in 3 hours. The last thing I needed was whatever manipulation he was cooking up. It's about your grandfather's will. There's been a development. My blood went cold. Grandpa had left me everything when he died 2 years ago. His Victorian house in Oak Park, his vintage Mustang collection, his entire life savings of nearly $1 million. It was his way of apologizing for the son who'd walked out when I was 8 and never looking back. The son who'd missed every birthday, every graduation, every moment that mattered. What kind of development? I gripped the phone tighter, already knowing I wouldn't like the answer. I've remarried. Celeste has a daughter, Bryn. She's 17, lost her father in a car accident. She's had a rough life, and we think it's only fair that she gets part of what should have been her grandfather's legacy too. Fair? I laughed, but it came out bitter and sharp. You abandoned your own daughter and now you want me to bankroll your do-over family? The granddaughter who actually took care of him while he was dying? You got everything, Raven. $1 million inheritance while this poor girl struggles to afford community college. Bryn deserves a chance at the life your grandfather would have wanted for her. She's not Grandpa's granddaughter. I am. I'm the one who sat by his hospital bed for 3 months. I'm the one who held his hand when he took his last breath. Where were you? Oh, right. You were too busy playing house with wife number 3. The line went quiet for a moment. When Dad spoke again, his voice had turned cold and calculating, the tone I remembered from the fights before he left. The tone that meant he had a card up his sleeve. Actually, there's something you don't know about that will. Something important. My stomach dropped like I was falling off a cliff. What are you talking about? Meet me at Rosewood Diner tomorrow at noon. Come alone. And Raven, bring the original will. All of it. The way he emphasized all of it made my skin crawl. Why would I? Because if you don't, I'll file a contest claiming the will is fraudulent. I have evidence that might surprise you. Evidence that shows dear old Grandpa wasn't quite as clear-headed in his final days as everyone believed. He hung up. I sat there shaking, staring at my phone. What could he possibly know? The will had been airtight. Grandpa's lawyer had confirmed everything was legal and binding. The estate had been settled for over a year, but that tone in his voice, that smug certainty that reminded me exactly why I'd spent my childhood walking on eggshells around him. I called in sick to work and drove straight to the filing cabinet where I kept all of Grandpa's documents. The original will was in a sealed manila envelope, exactly where the lawyer had left it after probate. I'd never actually opened it myself. Mr. Peterson had read the relevant parts aloud during the proceedings, and I'd been too emotional to focus on legal details. My hands trembled as I broke the wax seal for the first time. The first page looked exactly as I remembered. Standard legal language, Grandpa's signature, 2 witnesses. I, Theodore Walsh, being of sound mind and body, do hereby bequeath my entire estate to my beloved granddaughter, Raven Walsh. Then I turned to page 2. The blood drained from my face. There, in Grandpa's unmistakable handwriting, was an addendum dated just 3 days before his death. An addendum I'd never seen. An addendum that changed everything. In the event that my son, David Walsh, provides legitimate proof of remarriage and legal adoption of a minor child within 5 years of my death, said child shall be entitled to 25% of my estate, to be held in trust until age 21, provided the adoption is completed with genuine intent to provide familial care, and not for financial gain. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. How had I missed this? How had Mr. Peterson missed this when he read the will aloud? I read it again, hoping I'd misunderstood, but it was crystal clear. If Dad had legally adopted his new stepdaughter with genuine intent, she was entitled to a quarter of Grandpa's estate. My mind raced as I calculated the numbers. The house alone was worth $480,000. The car collection another $220,000. The savings and investments topped $380,000. This girl, this complete stranger, would get nearly $270,000 of what I thought was mine. But what did genuine intent mean? And how could anyone prove intent one way or another? I grabbed my laptop and started researching marriage and adoption records. David Walsh, Remarriage Adoption, Illinois, 2023. Within minutes, I found what I was looking for. Dad had married Celeste Morrison 3 months ago in a small ceremony in Cook County. 2 weeks later, he'd legally adopted her 17-year-old daughter, Bryn Morrison Walsh. The timeline was suspicious. Who adopts a teenager they've known for 3 months? Unless they're rushing to meet a deadline. My hands shook as the reality hit me. Dad hadn't just randomly decided to shake me down for money. He'd planned this. He'd known about the addendum all along. But how? Grandpa had despised Dad for abandoning us. During his final months, he'd called Dad a worthless coward who couldn't handle being a real father. Why would he leave money to Dad's future adopted children? I spent the rest of the day going through every single document in Grandpa's file cabinet, looking for any clue about why he'd include such a provision. Bank statements, medical records, insurance papers, old family photos, nothing explained the addendum. Then I found something odd. A receipt from a law office I didn't recognize, dated the same day as the addendum. Consultation regarding estate planning complexities, $500. The lawyer's name was Vincent Hawthorne, and his office was downtown. I called immediately. Mr. Hawthorne's office, this is Miranda speaking. Hi, I'm calling about a consultation my grandfather had with Mr. Hawthorne 2 years ago. Theodore Walsh? Oh, Mr. Walsh. Yes, I remember him. Such a sweet man. I'm sorry for your loss, dear. Are you the granddaughter he talked about? I am. I'm trying to understand something about his will. There's an addendum that I'm confused about. Miranda's voice dropped to a whisper. Honey, are you somewhere private? Because what your grandfather told us that day? Well, let's just say he was playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. My heart started pounding. What do you mean? Can you come in today? Mr. Hawthorne is in court, but he left specific instructions about what to do if you ever called. He said your grandfather predicted this exact scenario. 2 hours later, I sat in Vincent Hawthorne's oak-paneled office, staring at a thick file marked Theodore Walsh, Contingency Planning. Mr. Hawthorne was a distinguished man in his 60s with kind eyes and silver hair. He opened the file carefully. Your grandfather was one of the most strategic thinkers I've ever encountered, he began. He came to me because he was worried about his son's pattern of behavior. He'd hired a private investigator to track David's movements over the years. He handed me a manila folder. Inside were photographs, financial records, and surveillance reports dating back 15 years. The photos showed Dad with multiple women over the years, each relationship lasting about 6 to 8 months. The financial records revealed a consistent pattern: debt, failed business ventures, unpaid child support to at least 2 other women in different states. Your grandfather knew David would come back the moment he smelled money, Mr. Hawthorne continued. The addendum wasn't meant to benefit David. It was a trap. A trap? Look at the language again. Genuine intent to provide familial care and not for financial gain. Your grandfather knew David was incapable of genuine anything. He was betting that David would rush into an adoption for money, leaving behind evidence of his real motives. He pulled out another document. This is a letter your grandfather wrote to be opened only if David tried to claim money through an adopted child. I opened the sealed envelope with trembling hands. My dearest Raven, if you're reading this, then David has found a way to hurt you even from beyond my grave. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I thought the addendum might scare him away, but I should have known better. David has never met a scheme he wouldn't try. The provision about adopted children isn't a gift to anyone. It's documentation of his greed. By the time you read this, I guarantee David will have rushed into marriage and adoption without taking time to build real relationships. He'll have left a paper trail of his manipulation, and you'll have grounds to challenge his claim based on lack of genuine intent. But there's more you need to know. The will Mr. Peterson read to you isn't the only will I wrote. There's a second will, dated 1 day after the first, hidden in my safe deposit box at First National Bank. The key is taped under the false bottom of my jewelry box upstairs. Box number 247. That will contains my real wishes. Everything to you, with no loopholes for David to exploit. But it also contains something else. Documented proof of David's pattern of abandonment that you can use to protect other families he might target in the future. Use this information wisely, my darling girl, not just to protect yourself, but to protect the innocent people David will hurt if no one stops him. The addendum was never about giving him money. It was about giving you ammunition. All my love, Grandpa P.S. I've also left detailed instructions with Mr. Hawthorne about how to proceed if David brings an adopted child into this mess. That child is a victim too and deserves protection. I looked up at Mr. Hawthorne, my mind reeling. There's another will? There is. And based on my investigation over the past few months, your father has walked directly into every trap your grandfather set. What investigation? Mr. Hawthorne smiled grimly. Your grandfather paid for ongoing surveillance of David's activities. The moment David made contact with a single mother named Celeste Morrison, we started documenting everything. He opened another file. This one contained recent photographs and reports. Dad courting Celeste with expensive dinners and flowers. Dad researching her financial background through public records. Dad meeting with shady lawyers about estate law. And most damning of all, Dad coaching a confused-looking teenage girl on what to say about their family relationship. We have hours of audio recordings, Mr. Hawthorne said. David's been telling people that Bryn is actually his long-lost biological daughter, not an adopted stepdaughter. He's planning to claim she was deliberately excluded from the original will and demand a complete revision of the estate. I felt sick. He's going to destroy that girl's sense of identity for money. We don't think she knows what he's really planning. From what we can tell, she believes David is trying to help her get money for college through some kind of family trust. She has no idea he's planning to claim she's his biological child. The scope of Dad's manipulation was breathtaking. It wasn't enough to steal from me. He was willing to steal a teenager's entire sense of self. What's our next move? I asked. We document everything that happens at tomorrow's meeting. Let David reveal his full plan. Then we present evidence that his adoption was done in bad faith, making him ineligible for any inheritance under the terms of the addendum. That night, I drove to Grandpa's house, my house now, and sat in his favorite armchair, trying to process everything. The Victorian walls seemed to whisper with memories of Sunday dinners, homework sessions at the kitchen table, and late-night conversations about life and fairness and doing the right thing. Grandpa had taught me that real strength wasn't about winning. It was about protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. Tomorrow, I'd have a chance to practice that lesson. I went upstairs to Grandpa's bedroom, which I'd left untouched since his death. His jewelry box sat on the antique dresser, a mahogany piece that had belonged to his own father. I'd never had the heart to go through his personal belongings. I felt along the bottom of the box until I found the loose panel. There, taped to the wood, was a small silver key and another note. For my brave granddaughter. The real inheritance is in box 247. But remember, sweetheart, the money was never the point. The point was making sure you knew how much you were loved. The next morning, I was waiting outside First National Bank when they opened. Ms. Walsh, the bank manager greeted me warmly. I've been wondering when you'd come for the box. Your grandfather left very specific instructions that only you could access it, and only after receiving the key from his jewelry box. Box 247 was larger than I'd expected. Inside, I found the second will, exactly as Grandpa had promised. This one was simple and direct. Everything to me, no conditions, no loopholes. But there was so much more. A thick folder contained detailed financial records showing Dad's debts, failed businesses, and unpaid obligations to previous wives and children. Bank statements proved he'd been living off borrowed money for years. Court documents revealed child support judgments in 3 different states. Most shocking of all was a private investigator's report revealing Dad's current scheme wasn't his first. He targeted at least 4 other wealthy widows over the past decade, marrying them quickly, gaining access to their assets, then disappearing when the money ran dry. 2 of those women had lost their life savings. 1 had attempted suicide. There was also a recent addendum to the investigation. Dad was already courting another woman, a retired teacher named Patricia Hensley in Florida who'd inherited her late husband's pension and property. He'd been seeing her while married to Celeste, planning his next move before this scheme was even complete. A handwritten note from Grandpa was attached to the report. Raven, by the time you read this, David will think he's orchestrated the perfect con. He has no idea that every step he's taken has been predicted and documented. He's not just stealing from you. He's part of a pattern that's destroyed families across multiple states. This isn't just about protecting your inheritance anymore. It's about stopping a predator before he ruins more lives. The evidence in this box is enough to put David in prison for fraud, bigamy, and child endangerment. Use it wisely. And remember, sometimes the best way to honor the past is to protect the future. I spent the morning reviewing every document, every photograph, every piece of evidence Grandpa had collected. The scope of Dad's crimes was staggering. He wasn't just a deadbeat father. He was a career criminal who specialized in targeting vulnerable women and children. At 11:30, I sat in my car outside Rosewood Diner, watching Dad through the window. He looked older than I remembered, grayer around the edges, but still carrying himself with that same arrogant swagger that had intimidated me as a child. Across from him sat a teenage girl with long brown hair and nervous eyes. Bryn. She looked so young, so innocent. She had no idea she was sitting across from a man who was planning to erase her identity for money. I entered the diner carrying a briefcase containing both wills, the investigation files, and a digital recorder. Mr. Hawthorne had advised me to get everything on tape. Raven. Dad stood as I approached, arms outstretched for a hug I didn't return. You look good. Success suits you. I studied his face, looking for any trace of the father I'd once desperately wanted to love me. All I saw was calculation. You must be Bryn, I said, turning to the girl. She smiled shyly. It's nice to meet you. David's told me so much about you. I'm sure he has. What exactly did he tell you? Dad's eyes flashed a warning. Just that you're my daughter and we've had some distance between us over the years. Distance. I repeated the word slowly, tasting its inadequacy. Is that what we're calling 12 years of abandonment? Bryn's face fell. I'm sorry. I didn't know this was going to be difficult. Maybe I should wait in the car. No, I said firmly. You should stay. You deserve to know the truth about the man who adopted. Dad's jaw tightened. Raven, let's focus on why we're here. Absolutely. Let's talk about Grandpa's will. I placed the briefcase on the table but didn't open it yet. But first, I want to understand your situation, Bryn. How did you meet David? The girl glanced nervously between us. He and my mom met at a grief counseling group about 6 months ago. My dad died in a car accident 2 years ago, and Mom was having a really hard time. David was so kind to both of us. He understood what we were going through. Grief counseling, I repeated, looking at Dad. What exactly were you grieving? The relationship with my daughter, he said smoothly. The years I lost with you. I almost laughed at the rehearsed sincerity in his voice. That's interesting. When did this grief counseling take place? About 6 months ago, Bryn answered. I nodded slowly. Here's what's interesting about that timeline, Bryn. According to public records, David started courting your mother 8 months ago. 2 months before he ever set foot in a grief counseling group. Dad's face went red. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. I opened the briefcase and pulled out a photograph. This is you having dinner with Celeste Morrison on February 14th, 8 months ago, before you claim to have met her. Bryn stared at the photo, confusion clouding her features. And this, I continued, producing another photo, is you meeting with a private investigator to research Celeste's financial background, same week as your first date. Where did you get these? Dad's voice was low and dangerous. The same place I got these. I spread out a series of financial documents showing his debts, his pattern of targeting single mothers with assets, his track record of abandoning families when the money ran out. Bryn's face went pale as she scanned the documents. Her hands shook as she picked up a court order for unpaid child support to a woman named Jennifer Walsh in Nebraska. David, what is this? Who's Jennifer Walsh? That's his second wife, I said gently. She has 2 children he abandoned when they were 6 and 8 years old. He owes her $47,000 in back child support. That's not, Dad started. And this, I continued, pulling out another set of documents, is Patricia Walsh from Ohio, wife number 3. He left her $23,000 in debt and took her car when he disappeared. Bryn was staring at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. But you said you'd only been married once before. To Raven's mom, Dad's mask was slipping. Look, kid, relationships are complicated. Are they? I asked. Because here's what's really complicated. I placed a recent surveillance photo on the table. This is you having dinner with Patricia Hensley in Jacksonville, Florida, 3 weeks ago, while you were married to Bryn's mother. The photograph showed Dad holding hands across a restaurant table with an elegant woman in her 60s. Bryn's voice was barely a whisper. You're cheating on my mom? It's not what it looks like, Dad said quickly. Patricia's just a friend you've proposed to, I said, producing a copy of a text message. A friend whose financial records you've been researching. A friend you've told the same sob story about needing money to help your poor adopted daughter. I watched Bryn's world crumble in real time. Her face went through confusion, hurt, and finally a rage I recognized from my own childhood. You're running the same con on multiple women? She asked. Dad realized he'd lost control of the situation. Look, I needed options. Your mom doesn't have as much money as I initially thought. As you initially thought? Bryn stood up, her voice rising. You researched my mom's finances before you even met her? The entire diner was staring now. Dad grabbed her wrist. Sit down. You're making a scene. Don't touch me. She yanked away with a strength that surprised him. Don't ever touch me again. I stood as well. Bryn, there's more you need to know about his plans for you. I handed her the PI's report detailing Dad's scheme to claim she was his biological daughter. She read in silence, her face cycling through disbelief, horror, and fury. You were going to tell people I'm your real daughter, she whispered. Dad's desperation finally showed. It would have worked out for everyone. You'd get money for college, I'd get enough to pay off my debts. By erasing who I actually am? Bryn's voice cracked. By making me lie about my real father? The father I loved? The father who died protecting me in that car accident? She was crying now, but they were tears of rage, not sadness. Your father was a contractor who made $35,000 a year, Dad said coldly. I'm offering you a chance to be connected to real wealth, to have opportunities he never could have given you. The casual cruelty in his voice made my heart ache for this girl. She reminded me of myself at 17, desperate for a father figure, willing to believe anyone who showed her attention. My father, Bryn said quietly, worked 2 jobs to make sure I had everything I needed. He coached my softball team every weekend. He helped me with my homework every night. He told me he loved me every single day of my life. She picked up her purse and looked Dad straight in the eye. You're not fit to speak his name. Dad's mask fell away completely. Fine, you want to be poor? You want to struggle? Go ahead, but don't come crying to me when reality hits. I wouldn't come to you if I was drowning and you had the only life preserver on Earth. I'd never been prouder of someone I'd just met. Bryn, I said, I'll give you a ride home if you want. She nodded, wiping away tears. Dad's desperation turned ugly. Raven, wait, we can still work this out. I have proof that Grandpa was mentally incompetent when he wrote that will. Medical records showing dementia. Witness statements about his confusion. He pulled out a folder and spread documents across the table. They looked official, convincing. These are interesting, I said, examining the forged medical records. But they have one fatal flaw. What flaw? I smiled. They're documenting the mental state of the wrong person. Dad's face went blank. What do you mean? The will you've been fighting isn't Grandpa's real will. It's a decoy he planted specifically to catch you in exactly this kind of scheme. I pulled out the real will from the safe deposit box and placed it on the table. This is Grandpa's actual final will and testament. No provisions for adopted children. No loopholes. Everything to me. Dad stared at the document like it was going to bite him. But the lawyers, the probate, Grandpa arranged everything with multiple attorneys. The probate file contains the fake will because Grandpa wanted you to think you had a chance. He wanted to see exactly how low you'd sink. I gathered up all the documents, including his forged medical records. And now I know. You'd steal a teenager's identity, forge medical records, commit bigamy, and try to rob your own father's estate. All while pretending to care about the daughter you abandoned 12 years ago. Dad lunged across the table, trying to grab the real will. You manipulative little... He never got the chance to finish. Bryn had grabbed the heavy ceramic sugar dispenser and brought it down on his outstretched hand with a sickening crunch. He screamed, cradling his shattered fingers. That's for my dad, she said quietly. My real dad. Several diners had pulled out their phones and were recording. One man was already calling 911. I'm pressing charges, Dad gasped, clutching his hand. Assault and battery. With these witnesses? I gestured to the room full of people who'd heard everything. After they watched you try to steal legal documents? After they heard you admit to fraud, bigamy, and identity theft? His face went pale as the reality sank in. The police are on their way, the diner manager announced. And I've got the whole thing on security camera. I looked at this 17-year-old girl who just stood up to a grown man twice her size, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Hope for the future. Come on, Bryn. Let's get out of here. As we walked toward the door, Dad called out one last time, his voice desperate and whining. This isn't over, Raven. I'll appeal this. I'll find other lawyers. No, you won't. I turned back to face him. Because if you try, I'll release every piece of evidence Grandpa collected about your criminal activities. Your fraud, your bigamy, your abandonment of children across multiple states. I'll make sure every newspaper in the country knows exactly what kind of man you are. I pulled out one final document. A criminal complaint I'd already filed with the FBI detailing his interstate fraud schemes. You have 2 choices, Dad. You can disappear quietly and never contact me again. Or you can spend the next 10 years in federal prison. His mouth opened and closed like a dying fish. It's over, Dad. It was over the moment you decided to hurt another kid the way you hurt me. In the car, Bryn was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, Why did you save me? You don't even know me. I thought about Grandpa's lessons, about the cycle of abandonment that had defined the Walsh family for generations. Because someone should have saved me when I was your age. And because Grandpa taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when you need them. What happens now? What happens to my mom? Your mom is going to need support getting through this. David's not just a con man, he's dangerous. But there are resources, counselors who specialize in helping victims of financial fraud. What about college? Mom remortgaged the house to help pay for David's business investments. We lost everything. I'd been hoping she'd ask about that. Actually, there's something you should know. Grandpa's will included a special provision for educational expenses for any child who'd been victimized by his son. The lawyers call it the David Walsh Victim Fund. Bryn stared at me. Are you serious? Dead serious. There's enough to cover 4 years at any school you want, plus living expenses. Grandpa may not have been able to protect me from Dad, but he made sure he could protect future victims. She started crying again, but this time they were tears of relief and possibility. Why would he do that for strangers? Because he learned from his mistakes. He blamed himself for not stopping Dad sooner, for not protecting the families Dad destroyed over the years. This was his way of making amends. I dropped Bryn off at her modest two-story house where a worried-looking woman rushed out to embrace her. Celeste Morrison looked exhausted but strong, the kind of mother who'd made mistakes but would fight for her daughter when it mattered. "Thank you," Celeste mouthed to me over Bryn's head, tears streaming down her face. That night I sat in Grandpa's house, my house now, going through his papers one final time. There was one last letter I'd missed, tucked inside his favorite book of poetry. "My dearest Raven, if you're reading this, then you've successfully navigated the maze I built around David's greed. I'm proud of you, but not surprised. You've always been stronger than him, kinder than him, better than him in every way that matters. The money, the house, the cars, none of that is the real inheritance I'm leaving you. The real inheritance is the knowledge that you broke the cycle. You chose to protect someone instead of exploiting them. You chose justice over revenge. You chose to be the person I always knew you could be. David will probably disappear again, move on to his next victim. But now there's a paper trail. Evidence that other law enforcement agencies can use to track him. You've done more than protect yourself. You've protected future victims. The Walsh name doesn't have to mean abandonment and betrayal. With you carrying it forward, it can mean protection, justice, and hope. Build the life you want. Help people when you can. And remember that you are loved beyond measure. All my love, always. Grandpa P.S. There's one more surprise in the garage. Check under the blue tarp in the back corner. I walked out to the garage, past Grandpa's restored Mustangs, to the corner he'd mentioned. Under the tarp was a sleek black motorcycle, a 2020 Harley-Davidson Sportster with custom chrome detailing. A note was tied to the handlebars. For the adventures you never got to have with your father. Now you can have them on your own terms, with your own strength, and be truly free. I sat on the bike and cried. For the father I'd never had. For the girl I'd been. For the grandfather who'd loved me enough to orchestrate my healing from beyond the grave. 3 weeks later, I got a call from Mr. Hawthorne. "Your father's been arrested in Florida," he said. Apparently, he tried to rush into marriage with Patricia Hensley after leaving Chicago, but the FBI was waiting. They're charging him with interstate fraud, bigamy, and a dozen other crimes. How long? 15 to 20 years if he's convicted on all counts. And the evidence is overwhelming. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders that I didn't even know I'd been carrying. A month after that, I received a handwritten letter. "Dear Raven, I wanted you to know that I started college last week. I'm majoring in social work with a focus on helping families affected by financial fraud. I want to do what you did for me. Protect people who can't protect themselves. Mom's doing better too. She's in therapy and starting to rebuild her finances. We're stronger than we thought. Thank you for showing me that family isn't about the people who hurt you. It's about the people who help you heal. Your friend, Bryn P.S." I kept the name Morrison Walsh, not because of David, but because it reminds me that I survived his attempt to erase who I am. I framed that letter and hung it next to Grandpa's photo. 6 months later, Bryn sent me her first semester report card. Straight A's. A year after that, she was featured in the campus newspaper for organizing a support group for students from broken homes. 2 years later, she was accepted to graduate school with full funding for her research on family fraud prevention. She was building the life she chose, not the life someone else tried to force on her. And me? I kept Grandpa's house but sold the car collection to fund a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping families victimized by financial fraud. We called it the Theodore Walsh Foundation. Every year, on the anniversary of Grandpa's death, I take the Harley out for a long ride through the countryside he loved. I think about cycles, how they can trap us or free us, depending on what we choose to do with them. Some inheritances are money, some are property. But the best inheritance is the knowledge that you're loved enough to be protected, even from beyond the grave. And sometimes, if you're really lucky, you get the chance to pass that protection on to someone else who needs it. The cycle wasn't just broken, it was transformed into something beautiful. Dad never contacted me again. Last I heard, he was serving his sentence in a federal prison in Texas, finally facing consequences for a lifetime of hurting people. Bryn graduated summa cum laude and now runs a family crisis center in Chicago. She calls me every few months to update me on families she's helped escape financial predators. The Walsh name, which had meant abandonment and betrayal for so many years, now means something different. It means protection. It means justice. It means showing up when someone needs you most. And that, I think, is exactly what Grandpa had in mind.